People ask me all the time where to start embarking on their mobile food journey, and they just don't know where to start. So this video hopefully has some helpful guidance. I can't necessarily give you like a step-by-step instructional video on exactly how to start your business because it's so different from counties to cities to state regulations, and everything is usually different in every state. So I can at least give you a foundation, kind of a starting point, and somewhere that you can go from here so that you can start doing the research that is pertinent to your specific area and provide some basics for what you'll need to get started. So I just found this perfect link I will share in the video description for you. It is an FDA site and it lists state retail and food service codes and regulations by state. So you can go through and it has all 50 states, health codes. Some of them have links and some of them have PDFs, but that's where you need to start. So the ideal starting place is with the code associated with your state. So if you go and you read, ideally, if you're running any kind of food operation, all of the knowledge in the code is good. But if you look through the table of contents and find mobile food specifically, usually that has most of the information pertinent to your specific mobile food operation. Once you've done the research pertaining to your state's codes for mobile food, that provides you with a pretty good idea of exactly what your facility will need in order to pass your county health inspection, because the counties typically are going on the state's code. So after that, I would recommend starting with your seller's permit. You can go to, for California, it's the CDFTA, but if you just Google seller's permit in your state, you should be able to find whichever website it is, whatever organization it is that provides seller's permits for your state. Apply for your seller's permit. You may have to create an account, and once you have your seller's permit number, I think that usually takes a couple of weeks, then you can apply for your city business license. Most cities that you operate in will require you to have a city business license, and that is actually something that I learned before I got into mobile food, because I worked for a commercial paint company that every time we had to do work in a new city, we had to apply for a business license for that particular city. So my understanding is that any city that you ever work in is going to require you to have their business license. So once you have your seller's permit and your business license, you can apply for your county health permit, and you will need both of those things on your county health permit application, which is usually something around a 10-page document asking all the pertinence of your business, including address, your commissary, and all of the other things that they require. It's probably different in every state. My particular county has things like a commissary agreement, an electrical connection agreement, a restroom agreement, a food storage agreement, all these things, some of them which are absolutely necessary and some which are not. So commissary agreement is absolutely necessary where I live. I can think of very few exceptions to the commissary agreements in my area. I know that in some places people can permit their homes as commissaries, but we don't have like a dedicated space where we could do that in our home. And I don't know of anybody in my area that's been able to accomplish it because it's pretty strict regulations to have a commissary. I think I've shared with you guys that we have kind of a special deal with our commissary. We went and contacted a local restaurant and were able to get our cart to be permitted for commissary at the restaurant because they have like a little area in the back where we can put a gate, where we put a gate up, and we were able to store the cart there, and then they have everything that my food facility in particular needs. So for me, that was the way that I was able to get around having a standard commissary. But as far as I know, at least in my area, the regulations are pretty strict. It's very difficult to get around that particular regulation. Most of the food trucks in my area are permitted with an actual commercial kitchen for a commissary. That's another question I get asked about a lot. People always ask, why do you need a commissary? Why do you have to have it to be able to get your permit? The best answer for that is from the state's point of view, from the county's point of view, that if they were to have to go out and inspect hundreds, possibly even thousands of people's homes in addition to all the restaurants that they're inspecting on a regular basis, it would just be too much of a workload. I can't imagine that they'd be able to get that done. So I think it's a way for the county to kind of regulate food facilities and the conditions that these food facilities are stored in, and the cleanliness of the places that their food is stored, And it's just kind of a way for them to keep a little closer eye on some of the mobile food facilities in the area, keeping them all kind of centrally located at a couple of commissaries in the area, and at least having on file where everybody's keeping their food truck, because if it were left to people to bring them home, I think the health department would have quite a bit more difficult of a time ensuring the cleanliness standards and waste dumping standards and everything else that is required of food trucks if they were trying to keep track of everybody's homes. That being said, I do have some strong feelings about the way that is done, and I'll have to make another separate video about my opinion on commissaries and what I have learned since I started, and some of the regulations that I think are outdated, but I definitely think there are solutions that would be better than what we are doing now. So I'll make another video on that eventually, but for now, as far as I know, in my area, a commissary is 100% necessary. The restroom agreement, I don't necessarily need to pass my health inspection. It's going to depend, I think, on your specific operations. If you have an address that you're operating at on a regular basis, or if you have a route where you're doing the same locations every time, I think the health department's going to want to see your restroom agreement or your electrical connection agreement if you don't have a generator or a battery, something like that. That's what those are for. They just want to make sure that you know when you get there, you have a person who's willing to work with you to get your stuff going. But some of those things are not necessary for like my specific application, because especially now, when I first started, when I filled out my very first county health permit application, I had every single one of my forms filled out and to the T. One of the places I was going to go set up, I went and talked to the managers and had them sign all these paperwork, and I submitted everything 100% complete because I thought it was necessary. But it turned out, once I was already permitted for a year, the second time I turned in my application, the health department was much less concerned about all that extra paperwork concerning restroom agreements and electrical connections, because I have a battery in my cart, so I don't need electrical, and I'm never anywhere for longer than 2 hours, which doesn't require a restroom agreement. When I do events that are longer than 2 hours, they don't necessarily expect you to submit a new restroom agreement form every time. They just kind of assume that you're going to go somewhere that has a restroom within 100 yards for your own comfort, so to speak, too. So some of that stuff is really not as important as you might think. I think there's about 3 forms in my application that I just put NA, and they still accept the application. I think because I have a relationship with the health department and they know me, and anytime they show up for a surprise inspection, there's never any reason for them to suspect that I'm doing anything wrong. So that's kind of a good starting point in terms of all of the paperwork necessary to get started. Obviously, paperwork isn't the end-all be-all of the food facility. There are still maybe some repairs that you need to make with your food facilities, and the Cal code, or excuse me, the code for whatever state you're in should have all of the requirements that you need. For example, the size of your freshwater tank, the size of your wastewater tank, electrical connections or generator requirements, or mechanical refrigeration, things like that. So that's kind of how you get familiar with exactly what your facility requires. For me personally, when we got our cart, there was a couple things that were on it that we had to remove because we didn't necessarily need them. The specific example was we had a 3-compartment sink that was just too small. It was made with 6 containers, which are about 6 inches by 6 inches, and they just were too small to be a warewashing sink for my cart. So rather than have them require me to put in a whole new 12-inch by 12-inch 3-compartment sink, which is going to be way too big for my tiny little cart, there was no place for me to put it. We just removed it because we really didn't need it. My cart only requires a hand washing sink because we don't have chili or cheese. That's a whole other can of worms that I would have to open to be able to explain. But looking in your state's retail food code will help you find out exactly what your food facility needs. And if it's not in clear enough terms, my best advice is for you to call your county, find out who your mobile food inspector is, or maybe there's multiple, and just see if they will get into an email conversation with you. I did that with one of our inspectors right in the beginning when I was first starting. I had a whole bunch of questions and I had to find out exactly what I needed before I spent all this money to get this cart the way that I wanted it to be. I had to make sure that what I was spending the money on was accurate and I wasn't wasting my time and money making my facility the way I wanted it if it wasn't going to pass my health inspection. So highly recommend getting in touch with your health inspector for your area. They should be able to answer questions too. I know sometimes they can be unresponsive or take a long time to respond, but if you can get lucky and get a hold of somebody, usually they want to be very helpful because they are pro-business. The more businesses that are operating, the more money they make. So they really do want you to succeed. Once you're confident that your facility is up to spec and you are ready to submit your application, that's another thing. Make sure your facility is 100% ready to go before you submit your application for inspection, because you could end up getting your inspection the next day. And if your food facility is not complete, then your inspector is going to charge you a re-inspection fee most of the time, and you're again wasting time and money. So once your facility is up to spec, send in your application, let your inspector know that you're ready, schedule your inspection, and you should be good to go. In the next video, I will lay out some of the basic things that you need to pass a health inspection. It's going to be kind of tough because I can only really do it specifically for my area. There's only one major difference that I can think of that's a big requirement here in California in my area, that's different in most of the other places that people are applying for mobile food permits in the States. So I will lay that out for you in the next video. I hope this is helpful. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe so we can reach more people. The reason I do these videos is because when I was starting out, I had way too many questions and there were not enough answers. I could not find anybody to help me, guide me, or answer any of my questions. So thanks for watching.